welcome back to another episode of the Daily Wisdom Words podcast, where every week we're in conversation with people who have stories, advice, and life hacks, all of which take you one step closer to that feeling of hope. I am your co-host, Neil Trevelli.
And I am your co-host, Rini O'Day.
And we have such a special episode today. We're so proud to have, is it Katrina Leggins, right?
Yes.
I hope I got that right. Licensed therapist, writer. All three of us are writers, by the way, which we'll get into later. But yes, so mental health advocate and so many other things. Yeah, so we'll get into. But yeah, welcome. So glad to have you here, Katrina.
Hi,
Thank
Katrina.
You. Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, beautiful.
Before we start with any official questions, can you talk a little bit about your background and why you do what you do today?
So I am a licensed mental health professional, LCSW's licensed clinical social worker. So my background's in social work. I received both my social work degrees from the University of Oklahoma. I have been in the field of mental health now a decade. Yeah, like I started straight from my bachelor. Well, after I got my bachelor's, I started doing a lot of like intern work through an agency. And then when I got my master's degree, I continued with that. And throughout that time, I learned quite a bit about mental health in general, but also the population I felt comfortable working with. And since 2023, January of last year, I jumped into private practice. And that's been very, very fulfilling after being in a community mental health setting for for 10 years, and then jumping into private practice for a year. Such a different arena, but I have been doing this for so long, and I just love working with teen girls and young adult women and millennial women. Yeah, so that is my passion.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so just working with mental health just in general was something I've always wanted to do because of my own personal struggles and things that I experienced growing up. So it was a given that I was meant to be in this field.
You have started a conversation in the African American community, which is fantastic. I mean, because it's something that all communities need to have a conversation about, no matter what race you are.
So let's get into that. As far as awareness is concerned, currently, what is it like in African or African American culture, families? Is it being talked about enough? Maybe more so than 10, 15 years ago? What's the status on that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Being in the field for as long as I have, I've seen a shift, honestly, more so probably before the pandemic, but definitely during the pandemic, because we all had access a lot to the internet. And also that was a time where I think a lot of people's mental health was challenged the most because of us having to be home, be with our own self and our own thoughts and everything. But specifically in the Black community, I feel it's being talked about a lot more. People are more open-minded, I would say, in the community. Obviously, there's always still change that needs to be made, work that still needs to be done, but I see it talked about a lot on social media. I see it a lot talked about in movies and different shows. I just think that it's being more normalized instead of this being something not to talk about or feeling ashamed about. But more specifically, yes, I definitely feel it's being talked about a lot more than it was many years and many decades ago, but there's still work to be done for sure.
Absolutely. And has the recent social media boom, the hashtags and the celebrities, have you had conversations with them and, their voices, they help, I think, probably more than anybody.
Yeah.
To start the conversation.
Yeah, definitely more celebrities for sure. So since I work with a lot of Gen Z specifically, that conversation comes up a lot as far as like connections that they make with like some of their faves, their favorite celebrities that have posted. I mean, there's so many to name or so many to think about. But the moment you see a celebrity post something about it, you feel like an instant connection. Like, oh, okay, they're a celebrity and they're famous and they have all these accolades, but they still have problems like me. Meaning you can have all the things in the world.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't make you immune to mental health. And so, so when it's talking about more, for sure. I would say this generation is definitely connected more with those celebrities. And I see a lot more celebrities, Black celebrities too, that are talking about it.
Well, Chrissy Teigen talks a lot about, her mental health.
She does.
And I love her. I love her. And John.
Yeah.
I know. Empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy.
So that's so wonderful to hear that there's been a huge improvement and more talk there's more awareness. And that's so great around all over the world. But everywhere, not just in Black families, right? It could still be better. There could still be much more to do as far as raising awareness. So what are still some of the challenges that are there around in Black families concerning mental health issues? Is it misconceptions? Is it just not enough awareness? What needs to be tackled?
So, yes, I definitely
stop shooting young African American males. Start there.
That part.
Wow. Yeah.
I think every police force should start with their officers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's, I had a conversation the other day about that. This isn't anything new. We're able to see it now live because of the cameras and we're recording.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank God we can record it.
Yeah. But as far as like what I honestly see that is still an issue a lot for the Black community is backlash and judgment, because historically speaking, we're not meant to be strong or meant to be weak. We're meant to be strong and we're meant to be able to handle everything all the time. And so the moment you talk about sadness, that could be more so depression, or you're feeling anxious about something, it's like, well, why? Why do you feel that way? Or what is the reason behind that? As if it's not a reminder that I'm human first. And then let's think about how the United States is number one. And so many different factors that goes into why a person struggles with their mental health. But I do feel a lot within the Black community and within our own families at times, it can still be a lot of harsh judgment about someone who has a mental health diagnosis or wants to talk about their mental health diagnosis, and just being judged about that, which you shouldn't be, because in reality, we all deal with mental health. We all might not have a mental illness, but in reality, everybody deals with mental health. And if you were to say you don't, that's a lie. Let's just think about the last 3 years. Let's just think about the last 3 years. I always use that as an example because we all were impacted somehow with this epidemic, with COVID. So, but yeah, that's what I would say it would probably still be a challenge that needs to be worked on. But I see improvement just based on conversations I have, even with clients and my own friends and family, and then with my platform. I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah. We need more people like you. We need more people like you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We do. You have a great voice in this.
We learn about so much, and although I still feel we don't learn enough, but that's a separate episode. But we learned so much about civil rights leaders and the history and all that of slavery and all that. We don't the general public is still not as aware when it comes to mental health pioneers and the Black people who pioneered awareness and advocacy. So who are some names like that we should be aware of and we can learn from, research them, look up what were they doing, why they did it, and what impact they had?
Okay.
But before you answer that, Katrina, who caused mental health issues in African Americans?
You said who caused it?
Who caused it? White men.
Yeah.
White men.
We think historically, yes, like
slavery. Anyway, I just wanted to,
No, but you're definitely speaking some truth there. But two people, because it's a lot of people. And I want to make that clear. But I think two people that come to mind is B.B. Moore Campbell and Dr. Beverly Green. And I think those are two people to look up. And these are Black women. I love their work, and more specifically because there were safe spaces that were created. It was a lot of advocacy work that they did for the community. I mean, honestly, still do, because they've kind of paved the way and gave us the tools that we needed to, be more open and honest about mental health, and created that awareness that is needed. But also just understanding not only being Black, but also when it comes to gender, when it comes to sexuality, that's another layer of, trauma, but also different issues that Black people can face in the Black community. And so I would say start there, but there's so many pioneers, I would say, that are big advocates in the mental health community. But those two women stick out the most, or at least as far as who I enjoy. There's a lot of pioneers for sure. And honestly, I think just like we learn in school, like we don't learn enough about like African-American pioneers have done what they've done for mental health. I mean, on a lot of different levels, truthfully. So sometimes, or really, we have to do the work ourselves and do the research and be open and willing to learn about, their work. So that this is a reminder of, okay, there's more work to be done, at least to look up, so you can be informed and be aware of who's done what to help us get to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why this is a huge part of why we do this, and why we're trying to broaden the horizons of this podcast, is to create that kind of awareness across all cultures, because it's very crucial to know, so very beneficial. Very crucial. In your as a therapist, what are some of the biggest misconceptions specifically that you've came across with clients? Like, what do they do they come in and say, I don't understand why this is happening? Or do they assume maybe it's this, but it's really from a therapist point of view, you can say, no, actually you have this mental health issue or that. What are some of the biggest things that you've had to clear up over the years that you found in your practice?
Yeah. So, and if we're talking about African Americans, what I find is a common theme is mental health equates to weakness, or therapy, since coming to therapy, oh, that's for white people. What? No, it's for all people. But because of, how we grew up in our households, not allowed to talk about problems, not allowed to expose things that are going on, not allowed to be open and honest about how you feel. And so when it comes to understanding, oh, this is a mental health struggle, but it's a mental health struggle, but does this mean I'm strong? Does this mean I'm weak? And so I think those two for sure are common misconceptions that I see a lot. Also, sometimes when people hear about someone who's diagnosed with a mental illness, they may call them crazy, think that they're violent, think that they, it's just like, you're so uneducated and you don't understand what that looks like, what that means. And then you're adding on to the stigma at this point, and so some of these things I have to, we call it psychoeducation. That's so important. Let's talk about why you feel this way, but let's also talk about the classic signs, the warning signs, the symptoms. But even so, what brought you here, and why do you have this thinking? Where does this stem from? Why do you think this way? Why do you feel this way? So we can undo and unlearn that, and then obviously work through the presenting problem. But those are very common. Yeah, mental health is a sign of weakness. Therapy is a white people thing, and I'm just like, oh no, we have to change that dialogue. Not true at all. Yeah. So
exactly. Because only 25% of African Americans seek mental health treatment, whereas 60% of whites do, and that's got to change. I mean, we all need it, no matter what race you are.
And a lot of barriers go into those numbers for sure when you think about it. Also, a lot of people want someone who looks like them, which is another reason to add on to why I got into this field. I get a lot of clients. They're like, you know what? Part of why I wanted to see you is because you're Black. And that's, you can have a preference, and not just being Black, any race, any gender.
Any race,
you can ask and request a preference, but I get that a lot. I felt connected because I know that you're going to understand me on some different levels that a non-person of color or a non-Black person would be able to understand. And so that brings in more Black people into therapy and feel more open and honest, because the conversations I have, I know that my clients feel safe, you know, and they tell me.
Right.
That's part of why. But, you know, it's just a relaxed feeling. It's a comfortable feeling. And I'm always honored, you know, to be able to be that person and be that representation that is still needed as therapists in the US, where it's still not a big number of Black therapists, you know, that are professionals. So it's still a huge need to have more Black women, especially Black men therapists too, Black male therapists.
Yeah.
Do you see that changing in the near future? Like, what do you see? Like, do you see that? Okay, is it a positive outlook?
I would say I'm 50-50, and more so is because it starts with these exams. A lot of these exams that a lot of, and you can hear from a lot of people's like stories when it comes to the national exams that we have to take, the state exams to become licensed, and those tests don't always represent us. It's biased a lot, and I think that's why a lot of African Americans have a hard time getting to this point, because that's a barrier in itself, getting past that test, like having a test over and over and over. And then the money that goes into that, I mean, it is traumatizing, honestly. But I do see that a lot of people want to be in the field. So that's why I say it's 50-50. If we can get some changes made on like a national level, like, yes.
Exactly.
For sure.
But I see a lot of people wanting to be in the field. I'm like, yes, we need more African American, you know, therapists.
For sure.
You mentioned that you work with young African American women.
Yes.
You know, it starts there. If they, But my question, and this is like totally off the subject kind of thing, is who brought them to you? Their mothers? What themselves? I'm just kind of curious, because I mean, this is a great place to start.
Yeah.
Get them younger, and
I agree, which is another reason why I like working with this demographic. It's a lot of different ways that people decide to come to therapy. I actually try to track that myself, just so I can kind of see what's the common theme. And because I primarily work with the Gen Z population, a lot of them honestly and truly find me on social media or Google. You know, occasionally I get referrals, you know, from other therapists, or maybe like someone's mom or aunt or someone has found me through a directory, or word of mouth, you know. But with the generation I work with the population I work with, social media. And that's because I've always had a social media presence. So I have to add that. I make it known. I have my business are a lot of people track or find me through my business online. But for the young people, for sure. I mean, that's why if you think about it, like with TikTok and Instagram, like I like to tell people that's a great way to find therapists. That's a great way to learn information from licensed therapists that are in the field, but it's not a replacement for therapy, but it's a good, you know, and I have to make that disclaimer, because people will try to make this like their therapy, and it's like, it's great supplemental information, but you have to be careful, because there are people out here that are fraudulent and not don't have the credentials to back up the information that they're giving. So yeah, I would say social media for sure. That's a powerful tool.
That's awesome. It really is. It really is. Yeah. And it's good and bad.
Yes.
Like you said, they're fraudulent people. And you know, it's a tool for bullying. It's a tool for you know, people that shouldn't be tracking little younger people, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Misusing it.
Could you suggest like tips for younger, like because you see a lot of, you said Gen Z, tips for utilizing it safely, like so all social media platforms, if you have a few tips for them?
Yeah, so I think, you know, one of the biggest things is, if you're using it a lot, like let's track first, how often are you using social media? Because if you're using it, for example, 10 hours out of a day, we got to find a way to take breaks from it, you know. And I love, like with our phones now, we can set time limits like on each app to let us know, okay, this is the limit of how much I want to be on this app today. Now, granted, that's not easy for a lot of people. It's a lot of self-control that goes into it, but that could be a good way. More so for like teenagers. I always tell them never give out any identifying information. Where you live, people's names, people's addresses, things of that nature. And then you can track who follows you and who you follow, keeping your page private and monitoring your following list, because some people will create fake pages. And like you said, like that's a way of trying to take advantage or even trying to bully someone. So monitoring, who you follow and the page that you have. I have that's a whole presentation in itself about social media. But yeah, those are a few things because it's real. And because so many of us use it where it's for our businesses, where we're making money or just for leisure purposes, it can be like a good distraction. It can be helpful, but then it also can be harmful if we're misusing it or abusing it. So, but yeah, those are a few things I would say, at least to start off with. Because you could be whoever you want to be on the internet. You can make people believe whatever you want. You put out there what you want people to see, and then also people don't always put everything out there because nowadays it's about getting high views, a lot of likes, all that matters.
Influencers.
Influence. Yeah, so you want to attract people to your page, and it could become an addiction. So you have to be careful. Gotta be careful.
You've mentioned like so many hats, and another big hat for you, I know, is Kenny Nicole writing. Tell us about that. What is it? Where did you get the idea from? How did that all come about? Give us the 411 on that.
K Nicole is like my little baby. Like that's honestly even how I started like my mental wellness business, because that's what it essentially is. That's even why I got into social media the way that I have. But it honestly all started with me wanting to find a way to bring awareness to mental health. If I'm just being honest with you, how can I use my voice, at least within my community, but then it grew to other people finding who I was in this page. And then the following kind of grew from there and the brand grew from there. But as far as what it's about, more so about mental health wellness, but also I like to provide tools and resources and things that people might have a hard time finding. I have a lot of free things on my website if you've never been, just to give people, because that's something I just love to do. I just wanted to help out somehow. I do workshops, I do trainings, I do a lot of things that are focused on mental health and self-care. And from there, I just kind of added on more things within that brand that I felt people would connect with. I have a t-shirt business. I have the private practice now. I do a lot of collaborating with a lot of different mental health. I have to say that mental health self-care brands. It's just great. But yeah, it just brings awareness to mental health, lots of information, mental health and self-care related. And then the writing part, because I always have to tell people, because they're like, are you a publishing company? I'm like, no, not even close. I do a lot of writing that's focused on mental health, self-care, and things that I think people should know if they don't know. I'm giving a lot of free information, essentially.
Where can people find you?
Everywhere. So I have a Instagram, and I'm gonna say all of them because they're all the same name. So
I just started following you.
Oh, thank you. I have an Instagram. I have a Facebook business page, and then I have TikTok because for my young people, and a Twitter. They're all under K Nicole Writing, and that's KNICOLE, and then writing, like how you write.
Is that your middle name?
Yes. You know what? A lot of people don't figure that out. They always call me Nicole. They think which it makes sense. But my first name is Katrina. I have two middle names, and one of them is Nicole. Yep. K Nicole.
Oh, beautiful.
K Nicole Writing on all those platforms.
Perfect.
Wow.
Perfect.
So this podcast, one thing we always say, right, it promotes hope, right? that
Yeah.
anybody who's struggling with any condition or any issues, it's always hope. So let's try to end with that. Can you say a few words of hope and maybe some advice for young people out there who are struggling, who want to take that first step, but maybe have trouble, and specifically Black young people who maybe have some, either pushback or, therapy or whatever resources? Say some words of inspiration and hope, and that what can they do to take that first step towards a healing journey if they're struggling?
So first and
A
foremost,
really good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Yeah. I think first and foremost, be honest with yourself, because I think that sometimes we can ignore when something's wrong or put it on the back burner, but that doesn't last long. So be honest with yourself, like, I need help. I have X, Y, and Z going on. From there, remind yourself that you're allowed to be vulnerable. You're allowed to seek help without the judgment, regardless of what other people think, because it's not about them. It's about you, your journey, and your healing. And when you think about seeking help, this is not a form of weakness. It's a reminder that you're human. There's so many things that a lot of us deal with collectively, especially as Black individuals, but also individually in the trauma that we have either experienced in our upbringing or even now. And so there's a lot of things that we're just unable to handle alone. And I tell a lot of my clients that we're not meant to do every single thing alone. There are going to be times we need support. We need someone there, and why not allow it to be a professional who's trained in this work?
It's so incredible that you have started this conversation.
I love that.
And you are going to be the 21st century voice of African American mental health, because,
never thought about that.
Yeah.
You're right. Wow.
I can see it.
From
I can see it.
our mouth to God's ears, let's get it out there.
Thank you for creating this platform where you are allowing other people to come on and use our voices.
Okay, guys, I have to head to the dentist. Not that I'm looking forward to that, but
yes, have fun.
I wish we didn't have to end soon. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If you need
Bye.
Talk to you later.
Yeah, if you need anything, just send me an email.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
100%.
All right, y'all.
Okay.